Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome along to one of these Creative Choices live editing sessions with myself, Sam Gregory, and I have two guests with me today. They say two is better than one. I'm joined, as ever, by Adrian Beasley. So, Adrian, good evening.
Hello, how are you doing, Sam? And Verity, how are you?
We are good. We're good. Adrian's got a lovely shirt on, and we might get into that later.
Yeah.
But we're joined. I should have lined up sort of trumpet heraldry by the wonderful Verity Milligan. So, Verity, good evening.
Hello. How's it going?
I'm very good, thank you.
It's very disappointed with the lack of trumpets. Good grief! Have to do around here.
Be careful, you're asking the wrong guy. You might actually get a real trumpet.
Yeah, real trumpet.
Oh, nice.
So welcome along, everyone. Thanks. There's a few of you already popping up your comments, letting us know where you are. For everyone who's joined us before, welcome back. And for anyone who's new, welcome along. In this session, we take about an hour, and we're going to go through a variety of images that you lovely people have sent in for us to creatively edit and do things in different directions. Now, just a couple of things up the top. First off, this isn't really a how-to guide to any particular software or anything like that. We're very much interested in talking to you potentially about the why and about different things that we might think of if we were dealing with these images. And all three of us, work in different ways. So hopefully it's a really interesting situation because of the way we all might approach things. So we don't have a set number we're going to go through. We'll spend a few minutes on each one, and then we might take that in different directions, or the next host might do a completely different image. Before I get into it, I would say a huge thanks. We've had loads and loads of entries for this one, which is great. Now, that does mean, though, there's absolutely no way we're going to get through 70 images. We're not even going to try to do that. Don't panic. But it does mean that we'll be back. We'll make sure we've got extra dates in the next few weeks, and we're going to put more of these in if you guys like them and you guys participate still as you have been. And so don't worry if we don't get to your image tonight. It's quite possible we'll get to it on the next session or even the one after that. All right, cool. So just before we jump into it, I would say that if you have any questions at all, do hit them into the comments box, either on Facebook or if you're watching on YouTube, hit them in there. I will spot them and I will throw them at whoever it might be towards, or it might be about an editing question, photographic question, whatever it is, just let us know. All right, Adrian, sir, let's start with you. So if you want to get one teed up, and we can jump into our first image and have a little chat about that, talk about it in more detail. So if you just want to share that, cool. Let's pop you on there.
Okay, good. See that? Yeah. So we have an image here of an iceberg, and or some ice at least, and a bird in the middle of that as well, which has been submitted. Now it's straight away rather underexposed, so I'm going to pop into develop, and we'll have a look at this image. So basically, I could just pull out the whites here. I'm going to pull out the whites here so that it brings out the detail in the highlights in particular. And with that change, you notice with that change, the color changes. So the color comes for free, if you like. It's just because we're increasing the contrast. We're separating out the tones. And you can see that happening in the histogram as well. And the point at which you get to, I guess, is going to be a bit of a personal thing, probably. I look at the sky, but it might be that the sky is just not making it particularly powerful. Sometimes I'll take a look and see if there's anything going on in the sky. So I'll just go a bit bonkers with it and see what pops out. Okay, a few dust spots. But really there's nothing there. There's no cloud there or anything. It's just tone. So in which case I'm probably going to elect to focus in on the ice itself, because I think this is where the really beautiful part of the picture is. And it's interesting, the water here, it's probably not adding anything to it, I think. So I'm going to probably remove that. Now, it feels like this is a bit of an angle as well. So crop tool is the place we're going to head and see what happens. Now, I have noticed, those of you that are Lightroom users use it a lot. I've noticed there's some slightly wacky things going on with Lightroom at the moment, in particular the crop tool. If you come in here, sometimes it'll show you that it's unlocked, and as soon as you move it, it's locked. So just it's not you, it's Lightroom at the moment. So I'm just going to pull down and create a bit of a shape, and let's just see what we end up with. Now, I could rotate this. I could say, well, that's not straight. So I might just rotate that, and that might just get me a little bit more height. And let's see what we've got. Yeah, that's looking really interesting. So the background, the sky wasn't really adding anything, I think. It felt to me as though it was more about the ice and the bird fortuitously in here as well. So now it's a case of deciding where to sort of pitch it, I suppose, brightness and intensity of the color. Now, unfortunately, I've never been to see this stuff for real, so I can't really draw any personal experience on the colors here. And I might therefore go a bit too far with it. But the total, the final brightness and the overall color in this image is something that I think you probably use your own knowledge of. They are beautiful blues and turquoises and so on in here. So I probably don't think it needs anything other than a basic exposure adjustment to bring that out. There's a little bit of noise in here, I think, and that's probably partly we cropped in a bit, and also it was a bit underexposed. I'm not that bothered about the noise, but if you were, maybe attach a little bit of general noise reduction might help out. And our little bird here he's not pin sharp by any means, but I think that's more to do with the crop, etc. So one thing to watch out for is just get rid of the noise that might be coming in from sharpening. So I'll do that. And then maybe just something to pull the whole image together, just a little bit of darkening around the edges, a little bit of a vignette, and that yeah, that's nice. I like that.
Adrian,
yeah.
Sorry, if I can just ask a question or make a point, I suppose. We've done a few of these now over the past few months, and these are all available on the YouTube Light and Land YouTube playlist for the live streams. And one thing we're commonly doing actually is just cropping in a little, sometimes just tightening up compositions from that point of view. And I suppose it's something at the point of capture that we're always trying to encourage. I mean, there are times obviously when you want the foreground, the sky, and all the rest of it, but it's something we see regularly, isn't it? That actually the picture is within. And I suppose the goal is sometimes to get to the point where you're seeing that in the field rather than after the fact.
Yeah, I think it's good to keep your options open for sure. And in this case, if it wasn't a zoom lens, obviously you didn't have much choice. We were probably on a boat, so you might not have too much opportunity. But if you do have the opportunity to crop in, then and afterwards you can do that as well. So I think there's going to be a bunch of other images in here. They'll just be beautiful shapes in the ice that will be pictures on their own, and those are all there to be had later. If you're lucky enough to have a bit of resolution to be able to crop in and make good use of that, then that's rather nice to do. So that's afterwards is good too. But in the first case, if you have got a zoom lens, maybe it's better to try to capture more of that image on your sensor and get the best quality, get the best resolution from it.
Yeah. Nice. I like you. Yeah, you could probably get a full series of things out of that one image in a way. Lots of little lovely abstracts and extracts. Yeah. Cool. Okay. I'll tell you what. I'll just whip that off, Adrian.
Okay.
Verity, can I throw to you next for something a little different?
All right.
Unless you had anything further to add on our ice. There was a couple of lovely ice images actually, and it's always that blue, isn't it, that we've kind of said you have to do with good taste and knowing maybe what was there at the time, etc., etc. So that's worth keeping an eye on.
I think there was loads of compositions in that one that it definitely jumped out at me. I think it's a turn of some description in the middle was fascinating composition point. All right, I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So I've gone for something that's not unlike something I might find in my own back catalogue, where I've been wrestling with some real bright highlights and wanting to keep them from completely blowing out. And if I'm on the hop or I'm not particularly quickly set up or the lights moved really quite fast, then I probably won't have the right filter on, or I won't quite have all the kit I need to expose for the sky as well as the foreground. So kind of take the second best option, which is just expose for the highlights and deal with the shadows later in Lightroom, which is the kind of shoot fast, deal later style of landscape photography. So so I think whenever I come into an image like this, I'm like, okay, well, what you want is to maintain that lovely bit of light that's going across a landscape, and there's really nice undulation of the mountains that are happening in the background there. The first thing I'd probably do is come in and just think about how I might just straighten it up a bit. Of course, you can do that with Lightroom's tool for doing that, but I tend to just sort of judge it depending on if it's, sometimes it will be pretty much there. Sometimes you might want to just do a degree or two. Sometimes just the angle of the land makes it look slightly off, and those are the ones that I find particularly frustrating. So from there, I'll probably bring the highlights down a little bit. There's a couple of things, and I'll find this. You'll notice if I bring the highlights all the way down, there are parts of this image that are blown out, and there ain't no getting those back. But for me, that doesn't mean you throw it away. It just means we have to sort of work with that and not reduce the highlights too much, because you end up with that kind of blown out bit of the horizon, which then detracts from the rest of the image and sort of pulls your eyes away. But of course, when you start pulling out the shadows, then you start to get some of this foreground coming back in. And that's going to help lead whoever's looking at the image through it. And you can see we've got these lovely rustic browns in the foreground, which are matching up with the hills and the fells in the background. I'll probably bring the whites down a little bit as well, bring the blacks up. And again, with any image that I start editing, it's kind of a work in progress. I love that about it. Like, I love that you might go too far with a slider and then you can pull it back, and all of it's a bit of an adventure. So in terms of a crop, when I look at it, it's about thinking about what in the image is distracting me and what doesn't necessarily add too much. And it's a bit of a shame, because I really like this little house over here, but I'm finding this rock in the water over here tends to pull my field of vision over to the right-hand side. So have a little play around and see what if we just sort of get rid of that, some of that sky at the top. And I might employ a grad filter as well, see how that looks. Similarly, more sort of tester to see how. You'll notice that my presets are somewhat all over the place, because that's Lightroom for you. It sometimes just decides that it uses your last preset, and that'll be it. And with this, I just want to bring down the highlights a little bit, maybe just bring down some of the blacks just to give it a bit of mood, bring back some of that cloudy, moody sky, but not affecting the highlights too much, because I want them to remain as they are. And yeah, so just, oh, hello. That's not what I meant to happen. That's where's that?
So you've gone for the grey card image there.
Yeah, we prefer that.
Come back. There you go. Yeah, let's have it at 120%. That'll do. Jeez. There we go. Come back.
All right.
What I was trying to do is, why is it doing that? It's not showing me but before. Oh, right.
You're using the wrong flash key.
Yeah, I was using the wrong. Oh, jeez. It's my first time here. You can see already that you're getting some of the detail back in that image, and it's starting to look more like the landscape that you might want to share. And I think this is lovely over here. And I think if I had a lot of time, I'd start going into perhaps dodging and burning a little bit, bringing out some of those streams of light a bit so they're a bit more prominent, bringing in some more of the foreground. Of course, inevitably, you're going to get a little bit of noise whenever you bring up the shadow. So you can go too far, and for me, like, that's too far. It starts looking a bit flat. I want to keep some of that drama. And I mean, of course, if I look at it, you're going to get a bit of noise, so I'll probably reduce the noise a little bit. I don't want to do it too much, because you're going to lose some of that sharpness. And the other thing I might work with is the temperature, so the white balance. Depending on my mood on any one day, I might take it up, make it a little bit warmer. Maybe bring out some of that drama again, or if I want to bring out some of the sky and the blues, I'm in a blue kind of mood at the minute. I don't know if it's lockdown free, but I'm always cooling images down these days. I think 2014 me would be like, what are you doing? Everything's so cool. And yeah, so, and you can have a play around with that. And of course, Lightroom has its own little presets as well. And I mean, of course, you can choose with the eyedropper if you've got a bit that looks mid-gray that you think might be a good opportunity to use that to give you a guide to what the image might be realistically. But I think images like this are about emotion as well. They're not just about being technically proficient. You want to convey the emotion that you felt when you were taking that photo. So yeah, I think for me, from a basic creative point of view, this is definitely where I'd start, and then I'd probably work on it a bit more. And knowing me, then go all the way back to where I was at the beginning. So I'm going to try and press the right / press the wrong one again. Right. It's the one at the top, Vem. Jeez.
Yeah, it's not the question mark. Just think of the question mark as being the wrong.
It's not the question mark.
There you go.
So just, we've got a bit more of a, you can see that there's already some of the difference there in the image.
Cool.
Right.
Okay.
I'm going to hand back to you.
Yeah, no probs. I'm actually just going to share mine. And sorry, there's a lot of buttons and a lot of screens tonight, everybody. It's super stressful, but we're doing well. Just a quick one, actually, on that, Verity, which you kind of got into a little bit as well, is I think sometimes it's good if you're considering tonal values and where the dense parts of the image are visually. So this is the color. This is the original color version here. Sometimes just quickly popping it into black and white, I find, is a really neat way for me to understand where there's big, stodgy or heavy parts of an image. So for me, we know immediately this foreground tonally is really dense, and so we have to kind of think about that. And it was interesting because you dealt with that color, knowing that it needed a bit of bringing out potentially, and with the crop as well. But that was just a little behind the thing there. Now I'm going to pick another one from Lynn. Sorry, Lynn, you're getting a bit of a treatment today, and then we'll move on. But I really like this, and I think a bit like the last image that Verity had a look at, is we get this feeling, and that's what a lot of this is about, isn't it? Is how do we, as photographers, share the feeling and the drama sometimes, if that's the style of the image, as we felt it and as we saw it, with the water rushing over our wellies, the tripods wedged in. Is it going to stay wedged in, or is the camera going to be half a mile out to wherever it is and everything's going to be soaking wet? So first things first, I really love the image, and I'm going to just take it in a kind of pinholey direction, actually. Is how I felt about it. Adrian's smiling because I reckon he may have had that on his radar as well. So I'm just going to do a very quick straighten up as well. And again, oh crikey, I can't reach the enter key there on this particular screen. When you're in these situations and the tripod's wedged in and you might have spikes in, and commonly things aren't going to end up straight. I'm going to just do something really quick with this, because actually what I would say is the exposure is really good. You've got all that data in from top to bottom, nothing's clipped. What you're dealing with though is really heavy blobs of rock. And I suppose you have a question to ask yourself. There's a couple of ways you could take it. One, you could go about trying to sort of get a little bit more of that detail back in those rocks and really bring them up and work on the shadows. However, I'm actually going to say just embrace the density of them, embrace the gloom, because for me, visually, there's enough space around them that we can take them quite dark and not worry about it. So all I'm just going to be doing here is a bit very brutal dragging down of things. And I might even take it too far. You never know. That can happen. And then I'm just going to push stuff up here. And what I want it to be going towards is a really, really contrasty kind of look there. It's Kenner-esque is a very brave thing to say, so I don't mean it like that. But what I mean is that dense contrast. And I suppose when I see big black rocks like this, I'm often excited to go crazy with them. And I know we're blacking stuff out, but that's cool. And then what you could do, although I'd probably go into Photoshop to do this, but I'm not going to dare attempt that because of running various systems here at once. But you could even do like, this could be a really horrible version of it here. But what I'm doing is just dropping off all the clarity everywhere except on this rock here to get this very soft pinhole kind of feel. So if any of you have used pinhole cameras, there's very little depth of field, and you tend to get this very soft, rough kind of feel everywhere else. I'd even play, honestly, with a little bit of the grain, and I would go in and do that in probably the Nik Effects, Silver Effects software, as opposed to doing it here in Lightroom. But if we just look at that, and sorry, I've really stitched myself up now. But that's just where I would go with it, because I think why, if I try to answer that question, why for everybody, is because there's a coldness, there was a bleakness to it, and so everything I do in the edit is to emphasize that coldness, that bleakness, that aloneness, that wild coast feel. But that's just my one way I might take this. Adrian, you interestingly, did you have that on your little list of ones to look at, and did you go?
Yeah, I will do it, but because it looks quite different. The outcome is quite different. So, and Lynn's getting the treatment here, isn't she?
Yes.
So, because the other one was Lynn's as well, and but they have something to show, I think. So let me just go share. Okay, so yeah, in fact, and I'll do these quickly. So yeah, we need to get that horizontal first of all, don't we? So yeah, and I agree with Verity. I do it by eye. There's lots of great tools, but actually by eye usually is the best bet. For me, there's stuff going on in that sky, and I want that. I'm really interested in that, so I'm going to have that.
He's going to have it. See, he loves his skies, doesn't he?
Yeah, there are some dust spots out there, but they're okay. You know, that happens. And then, yeah, you're right, Sam. That block, what do you do with it? Make it go darker, or just bring it out? Either way, you can reveal the shadows or the detail in there if you want to, and that can be quite nice. If that's your focal point, that can be quite nice. And then I'd still want more to that sky. More, give me more. Yeah, definitely going for that.
He's going full.
Well, you know.
No, I love it. I love it. This is great, isn't it? You know, two completely similar things, but different totally at the same time.
So, you know, drama, I reckon that was pretty exciting. It stood there. I think that sky was amazing. And I think, you know, the whole feeling of movement and darkness and cold and so on. So I really quite like going in that direction. So I'm, and it's funnily enough, I had that similar kind of idea about the one that Verity went. So, and I will quickly dive in there, because I think it's interesting, because as you said, Sam, that the idea of having to deal with the color in the foreground lifting, I actually went in the other direction and said, I think it's not about the foreground. I think it's about that bit there. And for me, I think that's where the picture is. So if that's where the picture is, I don't need the picture anywhere else. And just by darkening everything else, we get the luminance. You know, that luminance is there all the time. And then it's a case of cropping, really, and deciding how much of this image you want. So for me, all the actions in that section there, maybe it needs to be a bit wider than that, but I think it did need a little bit more than that. And then it's about bringing that out. And yeah, the highlights are a pain, but actually, so long as they're not completely blown. And in fact, actually, it's probably featureless highlight anyway. It doesn't matter if it's blown. It is only there. You can bring it back to the edge, but you know, you're not going to bring detail back in there. So that's okay. But you can bring it just inside if you really need to.
There are times, Adrian, aren't there, where it's actually much better just to leave those things alone, because restorative work on them can look.
It looks awful.
Terrible,
in fact,
yeah.
It's grey. It's the worst thing you could do to it. It stands out like a sore thumb. In fact, if I show you what that looks like, if you go too far with that, you bring down, say, the whites there. Watch the histogram. There's a little spike on the histogram. That's that cloud, or that bit of the sky. It's moving, and you're moving it around. That little spike's moving backwards and forwards, and that's that bit of sky. So if you go too far with highlights, it's not too bad. If you go in with whites or exposure, worse than that, then it just goes grey. It looks awful. So you really need to avoid that. It's best to be right on the edge, white if you can. And then, yeah, and as Verity said, somehow bringing out these beams, sometimes, you know, you can get a good you can add a little bit of contrast in those beams, and that will really help to, really make them stand out. And then it's a case of the whole image. For me, I like going this way, and that's I think where the drama is. And very often I find myself going more and more and more.
He's dark, everybody. He's
darker and darker.
The demons are singing.
I only turned into black and white. What am I doing? This is still. I can bring some warmth in it, still in color, or I could tone it maybe. And as you said, actually, Sam, Nick is great for toning, isn't it? So I like to do that. So that's so sometimes having the whole supporting piece is important, and I get that. Sometimes there's something in here that is much more important, and I haven't really changed this. I've changed everything else but that. I didn't make any adjustments in here. So it's really interesting that you can make the central part of the image sing by playing with everything except it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Shall Verity, do you want me to throw one at you, and then we'll come back, maybe Adrian?
Sure.
And I'm just sorry, Lynn. We could do your whole back catalogue. We're not going to. You've had plenty of time tonight. And everyone else who's watching along, great. We really appreciate you watching. For a start, don't forget you can hit us with your comments and questions in the comments box on Facebook or YouTube. The question here actually from Ali, if I can, what is the circle tool you're using? I use Luminar, and I'm wondering if there's something similar in that. Adrian, can I throw that at you?
Yeah, I haven't used Luminar for a while. Yes, there is. I can't remember what it's called. Somebody will type in and tell us what it's called. But yeah, it's called the radial filter in Lightroom. I guess it's kind of akin to the lasso tool. I think it's not the lasso tool, but it's in Photoshop. There are some other tools of a similar nature, but in Lightroom, it's just the most beautiful tool for making local adjustments, for making very natural looking local adjustments. So I would use it for everything, as you can see. If I hadn't got any other tools, I could pretty much do everything I do with the other tools with the radial filter.
Okay, cool. Verity, do you have one lined up, my friend?
I do, yes. 1 second. Let me just.
Splendido. And for everyone else, if you're watching this, you didn't get to upload this time. There's a Dropbox link which we share on our socials, and I'll put that back out again. So keep them coming, and we'll do another one of these. We're going to try and do one every month, to be perfectly honest. That's the plan. So yeah, whenever you're ready, Verity, I will pop that up. Okay,
right. Here we go again. Let's see if I can get my buttons right tonight. Okay. So this image in particular, I really like, because it's the kind of image that mornings like this sort of make my heart sing. Whenever you get hoarfrost, whenever you get all kinds of really interesting conditions going on, like the last couple of days. And I actually think it's probably one of the things that, in a way, it's quite hard to make. I mean, it's interesting conditions to shooting, but it can be really hard to make the image say what you saw, as it were. So trying to get it back to a place. And again, I guess photography is about how you feel about an image. So I think looking at this, immediately the raw file feels a little bit warm to me. And so I think I sort of have a play around with the white balance almost straight off the bat to just bring it down to a slightly different mood. And looking at the image itself, for me, there's just too much negative space going on. So I don't necessarily think, and of course, some people might disagree with me, I don't necessarily think all of that sky is doing much for the image itself. So I think I would bring the crop in, and I play around with it as well. So it might be that I keep it in its original format, but I kind of like just these sprigs over here of the hoarfrost down here, because it sort of leads you in. So sort of playing around with the rule of thirds, or it might work as a square. And I think this is kind of the joy of having all of these tools in Lightroom as well, seeing if there's something that works best. And I like this kind of diagonal here that tends to lead you into the image. So I'm not adverse to sort of having big subject matter front and center, but I think for this one, I'm going to go as shot, and then I think just bring it down slightly so the tree becomes more of the focal point. And now I've sort of, again, just going back, we've already kind of started to build a mood. I'm not a big fan of kind of big vignettes as such. I think they definitely have their place. I think I'm probably somewhere between Sam's kind of make everything nice and sort of smooth and almost neutral, and Adrian's more drama. But I think
that's what
again,
we called you.
Yeah.
So again, I'm going to bring down the highlights slightly. I still want some of these highlights in there. I'm going to bring up the shadows because what I find with these kind of images is that if it's too contrasty, so again, I'm going to bring down the contrast because I don't want it contrasty. I want that soft focus in the background, and I want the real texture of the ice to come through. And if you sort of pump I've done this hundreds of times with images. When you do this, I think it ruins it. So for me, I'm going to bring it down. And I'm not one to like lean the other way on my contrast slider, if I'm being perfectly honest. So again, I'm just going to play around with these, just bring it up a little bit. And again, with Lightroom, the more you do stuff, the more it feels like you get to know where your sliders should be for any one image. But that's kind of part of the adventure. And then I'm going to come down and do a bit of split toning, because I think this kind of image that suits a kind of more stylistic split tone. So I'm going to start with my highlights, and now Lightroom's kind of updated recently, so it's now just these circles rather than the sliders you used to have. So it gives you a bit more control over your midtones, your shadows, and your highlights if you're using Lightroom. So again, I can play around. I don't want to go too far. And again, you can see down here that you can play around with how it affects those highlights. So let's have a look at the shadows as well. And you can always click here and see how that is affecting your image. Again, it's just having a play around. I want to bring it down a bit. And then I might not use my midtones too much because that might affect it too much. Yeah, that's not going to work for me. So with me, I always go, my history thing over here is really good. So if I just head back to that. And just using that, it just makes a bit more of a mood, really. And I don't think there's really any noise in it. It's sharp as a tack. So it's already sort of sharpened it a bit for me. I'm not a big fan of noise in any sense of the word, but I can play around, have a look at if we might want to give it a little bit of a vignette, see how that's going to look.
Sorry, mate. Can I jump in? Quick question. Yeah. I know this is a bit of a broad one, but maybe just an overview, because I know watching these videos, there's going to be a vast array of people with different experience levels, different editing experience levels. So just as an overview, the question from Jane here is, can you explain what split toning does briefly?
So basically, it's basically color grading. It's color grading for photos. So what you're doing is you're sort of adding a different type of filter, in this case, to the midtones, the shadows, and the highlights. So you can see that I've pulled this towards the blue end. So you've got your color circle here. And if I pulled it to the other side, you would see it sort of start to warm up instead. So it basically puts like a little photo filter over it, is the best way of me explaining it. That then you get to control. You go back to the middle, obviously the image as was, it's basically where it started, but if you bring it back to those blues, and I'm just going to drag it down again, and then you get to just circle around that color wheel. It's a weird one for me because I used to work in film, like in video, so color grading was just part of it. It just adds something else to an image. If you want a certain mood to an image, I think sort of split toning can be really useful for that. And again, you decide.
Would you say, I think one thing when people do play with that, sometimes it starts to make them more aware about color balance and within highlights, midtones and shadows, which is a great thing just to be more conscious of anyway, when you're out and about.
Yeah, I think it's all about how the color works. I was saying sort of in the previous edit that I really like cool tones at the minute, and I think those are the ones that are really catching my eye, which is why this image catches my eye. And this is the kind of image I probably take into Photoshop, and I probably put it through the Nick collection and have a bit of a play around with it. Sometimes for me, Lightroom is really the beginning of how I work with an image. It sort of sets the mood of how the image might turn out in the end. And it gives me that roadmap, so then I can go on and be a bit more creative in either Lightroom or in Photoshop, depending on what I want to do. But for me, you know, those kind of mornings, they're all about the cold, and I just wanted to bring that to the image.
Cool. Literally amazing segue there. I didn't even realize I was doing it. Thank you, Verity. Fabidosi. Adrian, I might just throw back at you and then I'll pick one up after, unless you had anything you wanted to add to that, or do you want to, let's maybe pick a different one and just get into a few more.
I have a different one to work with, but in a similar vein, I guess. That this one I thought was absolutely beautiful, and I thought, well, that's it, done. You know, what else can you do to it? So I thought I would use this as a vehicle to do something a bit more creative with. So, and when I say creative, I mean, you know, well, butchering it really. So I'm going to just take this into Photoshop. So because this image is beautiful, I looked at that and I thought, that is really lovely. I don't really want to do anything with that. So what else might you do if you're hankering to have a bit of a play? Then what you might find interesting to do is do something a little bit more creative and bring the layers together. So what's interesting is any chaotic image is when it's kind of, you know, when you bring it to itself and reflect it, becomes a pattern and becomes repetitive. So, you know, you get that rather lovely. This to me looks like some kind of Buddha or something like that. It looks like a sort of some time construction going on in the woods. Look at that, there's a face in there. It's really interesting, and the colors in the foliage and so on are really fantastic. So and again, I would say it doesn't need anything more, but there are some other creative options, of course, all the way through here, which might reveal some harder or more chaotic or weirder combinations for combining the two images, particularly where they overlap, is really quite interesting. So I think sometimes when if you're looking to do something a little different, you've got an image, you know, this image didn't need anything doing, to be honest. I thought it was really beautiful. But nonetheless, it's sometimes quite fun to go and explore other avenues. Yeah.
Neat. I'm glad you do always take it in a direction that I hadn't even considered, which is great. Which is if anyone saw the first one of these we did, I'm pretty sure you did some inverting of colours on the bird.
Oh, yeah, it was that lovely cliff, wasn't it, with all the birds on?
Yeah. So
it looked the same but different.
Yeah. And that image turned up in the Landscape Photographer of the Year, actually, as a commended image, I believe. Yeah, not your edit.
Oh, right, good.
Cool. Okay. I tell you what, I'm going to grab a real quick one, actually, and then I'm going to make a point about something else. So, this my compadres may have thought of doing this one as well, but. You're going to see a 5-second edit, everybody. No, I'm joking. I'll try and do a little bit more. But I think this picks up on what Adrian was just talking about, actually, about things mirroring and patterns repeating. And obviously, it's a thing that we often see, isn't it? Landscape photography, we're often drawn to these reflections. And we all know that the morning would have been really amazing, you know, at that point, really cool and calm. And I've just realized that what I do is basically edit things in a very similar way all the time. But for me, I know this person, it will probably have been autumnal. I could probably even check the metadata to check that out. But there's some lovely color there. And I suspect that was high on their agenda. But for me, I see this in black and white. I'm sorry. I know there's a load of color there. Now, within it being black and white, I really love the simplicity, and it's interesting seeing how we all do these things differently. I would just let that top bit be white. I would let the bottom bit be white. That's fine for me. It's all adds to that calming nature. And if we're talking about why we do things, often I'm wanting a quiet conversation with the image, if you see what I mean. And so everything I do in the edit will try and push me that way. Now, with that in mind, there's a couple of ways you could go. You could bring the shadows actually down, weirdly, to make it feel a little more crunchy in the middle there. Or you could bring it all up quite a lot, and that might be a little bit too much. But I wouldn't be afraid of really pushing this really quite far to get this really simple, and I'm not going to do anything else to it, just really simple, very quiet kind of image. Now, that might not have been where anyone else would take it, but for me, I really quite like that. There is stuff you could do in the color, and I'd be interested to know if either of you had picked it up, because Verity, it's felt like a Verity one to me in a way. It wasn't. It was by Dave, but it has Verity leanings, and like I said, that's what I did with it. So Horses for Courses, there's some lovely detail in there. It's just a beautiful shot that doesn't need much as far as I'm concerned, and therefore a very quick, simple one to show you. I'm going to pass it over, and then I just want to make a point potentially that we saw on a few different images. Verity, did you want to pick one up, or did you want to do anything on that one even?
I think, hang on, let me go back to, I think, again, it's sort of interesting how we both approach, or all three of us approach an image. If I share my screen quickly, that's all right. So for me, yeah, I think it wouldn't even necessarily cross my mind to go black and white with it, but I think that's just because I'm such a big fan of color anyway. But yeah, I don't think there's too much to be done to it, and it's one of those images that I think I could probably overdo quite quickly. And but when I look at it, I think, you know, I want to bring out some of that mist and make sure that doesn't get lost in some of those really nice bright highlights that frame it. But for me, I think that my instinct is just to try and warm it up a touch. I want to bring out all of those autumn colors, and it's maybe a slightly blunt tool to use the white balance, but even just bringing up the shadows a bit as well, you can start to see. I've got images like this in my back catalogue, and you know, those autumn colors, and we're always chasing them. And of course, you can come down here. I'm not a big fan of vibrance and saturation. They can be a bit, again, blunt tools at time. I'm probably more happier working with the saturation sliders and luminance that place. But even just adding a tiny bit of vibrance off the bat and just bringing back some of that. And I think, yeah, it doesn't need much doing to it. It's got a really nice balance to it between the trees on the left, the island in the middle, and then the trees on the right as well. So all of it seems to work really well with the kind of misty mountains in the background. So yeah, I think, again, it comes down to personal taste. And I think playing with an image and having fun with seeing where you can take it is, I mean, for me, it's like 50% of the fun of photography. Although, you know, sometimes I work on an image for 5 hours and go, well, that's going in the bin and starting again tomorrow.
Actually, Verity, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Well, we've got Dave's with us, firstly. So, Dave, I'm just going to flash that up again. Ultimate Rydal Water, of course. He's processed it both color and black and white, and he loves both. And I would, because fundamentally, the image is just great. So that's off the top. Off this image, but as a non-related question, what do you have music on when you edit? Well, let's talk about the Atmos when we edit. I'm going to ask both of you this. Do you find you like to be in silence in the day? I know we think about the light around us, etc. Does it vary? I'll start with you, Verity, and then we'll throw to Adrian on this.
This is going to sound really dull. I listen to a lot of talk radio. I'm a little bit too politically aware. So I edit a lot. I'm a morning person. Unsurprisingly, the whole sunrise, getting up early thing. So I like to edit early. I think when I get to like mid-afternoon, although I like to take naps. I'm a prolific napper. Although we heard today that napping, you know, it makes your mental state's better if you have an afternoon nap. So I feel totally vindicated on that point. Sometimes I listen to music. If I do, it's probably not the kind of music you'd imagine. It's definitely not serene. It's probably like post-hardcore, emo, screamo music that most people wouldn't listen to. But or I'll put on an episode of something that I really love watching, like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer or reruns of Grey's Anatomy or something, just something in the background. But I'm not a big fan of silence. So as long as there's something on.
Adrian, dare I ask?
yeah, music. If I'm on my own working and editing, then yeah, music definitely. But it's the music I like is kind of electronic music. So it's by its nature, it's usually instrumental. So there's no words to get in the way, which is quite nice. So it's all atmospherics and it's all atmosphere. So which is really quite nice actually for working with editing images. I rather like that. And quite a lot, funnily enough, quite a lot of the music I listen to is very dark.
It's all making sense. No, it's interesting. And if you guys watching that, I'd be interested to know. Let us know in the comments. What do you do? Because I find I can't have voices. Sometimes music, yes. But I find sometimes if you're tired or if you're not quite in the right place, just don't do it. Just walk away. Know that it's not the right time. And then there's other times where you just get the flow and you're like, bang, I'm going to just go. And then you look and you go, oh my Lord, it's 2 hours later and I've done loads of different things. So Steve says he listens to the light and the live streams. Well, that's the best way to edit, Steve. I've got to be honest, mate. There's literally no other way to do it. Okay, cool. Now, as we just approach our last 15 minutes, this is great. Ali's saying she makes different playlists for different moods and places. She's very good. She's very organised, Ali. I can't keep up with that. Adrian, can I throw back to you for one? Perhaps?
Sure. Yeah. So I thought I might have a look at this this one because it's horrible, and I don't mean it's horrible as in it's a horrible picture. I mean as in the lighting is horrible. And it's mixed. So you've got a mixture of lighting here, and this is just awful to manage. So I thought I would give it a go. It's not an easy thing to deal with, but I mean, well, the easy thing is to press the black and white button, right? But we're not going to do that. We'll see if we can persevere. So I had a look at this very quickly, and so first of all, on the sky, we can definitely help that sky out a little bit because there's some really great stuff going on up in that sky. I have no idea what all this stuff is. I guess it looks like snow. Is it snow that's on a long exposure blowing towards us? I guess it might be. So with a bit of fun here, we can get some drama in that sky and have this hopefully see some stars coming through there. But the tricky bit is this bottom bit. You've got this green snow here, but look at the mountain. The mountain's lit by something else, and it's a different color. So I had a look at this a couple of different ways, and the one that seemed to be most successful was to sort of say, well, let's make the mountain white, and then let's see if we can sort out what's going on down here. And just sorting out what's going on down here actually became, because I guess Lightroom isn't the most sophisticated when it comes to color adjustments. But if we just simply turn that a lot down. The thing is, we know that these huts are beautiful red huts, aren't they? So we need to go back and rescue the huts, basically. So we're going to go in and just bring the huts back. At least we can do that. So we can recover our sanity in what's going on here, oranges and the reds in there at least, and then we can sort of, if I can take away my alarms, we kind of get somewhere with it, but it's tricky because that mixture of the lighting is, you get that when you're working maybe indoors, when you've got half light coming through the window, an electric light or LED light these days, really tricky to get those things to, for it all to work together. And that's kind of about the best I could get out of it, I think. But I'm sure it's a scene that many people have been and taken, but and probably would have been really dramatic, particularly if you're in the middle of a blizzard here.
Yeah, and Dave's actually said this is another one of his. Mixture is snow and aurora in the sky, and he struggled like hell to process for the reasons you've just outlined, Adrian.
I totally get that. It's awful. Yeah. So, but that sometimes happens. And oh well, did he send this one? Is this him as well? Yeah. Okay. So that's I guess the picture we normally would expect to see. But at night it's much more tricky.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So, oh, by the way, just on passing, Andy, go and get yourself a different filter holder, please. And there are several submitted pictures that had terrible filter edges here, which were the result probably of stacking, more than likely, with vignetting coming into the edges. And this is peculiar. This is sort of all rectangular edges on this one, so not quite sure where that's coming from. But yeah, you need to go sort that out.
Cool. Lots of great comments coming in about editing and processing. total quiet. We've got music. We've got whiskey. I mean, it's all going on, to be honest. Sounds like a cracking evening. Verity, if you can, do you mind if I throw back at you and then I'll grab one after that?
Yeah, I've got two, but they're both quite quick, if that's all right.
Go for it, mate. Go for it. Let me add you up. And actually, sorry, V, just before you go on, what I'm going to say to everyone is, look, you were amazing, sending us all these images. And I've been keeping a note of what we've done, and we've got stuff here to go through for a few weeks. Plus, we'll ask you all again in the future for more. So I'm sorry if we've not got to yours. We like to spend enough time so that you get something out of these, but we will get through them over the course of a few weeks. But Verity, I'll shut up and let you carry on, mate.
That's all right. So this one quickly, one of those images that when you look at, you think, it doesn't really need to have anything done to it necessarily. Like the highlights are there, the colors are beautiful, it works really well. The only thing that jumps out at me is that the power of just a slight crop. So for me, like bringing this sort of to an 8x10, so you get rid of this bit at the top. If I come back and put it as, so this is annoying me, this little gap here, and then this little edge down here. Ultimately, I think it would just look a little bit better if we get rid of those. It's a shame because we lose that lovely bit there. So just getting rid of that, and then just finishing at the top here, so it sort of just transcends that corner. And then like there's just very little that needs to be done to it. Like I've already pumped up the shadows a little bit. There's lots of detail in that flowing water, so I probably wouldn't do too much to it, to be fair. And I just feel that in terms of a crop, it works really well. So so I would, if I took an image like that, I'd be like, I mean, to be fair, I'd still work on it for 2 hours and then go back and play around with it. But that's just, and then also, can I just like go in for the wild card? Because I can't,
Go on.
I know it's not a big photo, but I love it. It's been captivating me entirely afternoon. This guy's face is amazing. And, you know, one aspect of Lightroom that I use quite a lot are filters. So presets that people have already designed or that I've designed myself. And they can be really, really useful for just getting a look and feel of an image really quickly. And what I tend to do is I have like an opacity slider that I've installed in Lightroom, which means I can edge the effect of that filter off slightly, so you don't have to have the full kind of effect. But with this dude here, there isn't much that I'd want to do to him, but I just want to crop out that bit there and just maybe just straighten him up just a smidge there. So we get rid of anything that's too distracting. And it's just such an interesting face. So there's no point going in with a landscape mentality. So I've got a couple of filmic type presets, because I feel like this is a photo that demands a filmic look. So I can play around with that, and obviously, depending on the kind of feel that I want to get from that, then if I click on that, you can see that already has a big effect. But if I sort of hit my key here, I've got this opacity slider, so I can kind of edge off the effects of that filter, and I think it's really useful. It's actually a really useful thing that I use basically every day in Lightroom. So just gives it a little bit more, just gives it a little bit of something else. And again, it depends on what you want to do. I could come down, make it even more filmic, use something like that, and again, edge it off slightly so it's not too overwhelming. But yeah, I mean, actually, I like the way that makes his kind of green khaki a bit brighter as well. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, I think presets can be really powerful. And, you know, sometimes all you need is a crop and it makes an image work. And that can just, you know, be the difference between looking at something and going, something about this isn't right, which I've done for many, many hours at a time. Like, what is it about this that isn't right? And then I've shown it to someone else and they've gone, yeah, it's just, you need to just, there's a square in there, you're just not seeing it. And I mean, sometimes you can get really close to images and almost not see exactly what you need to be seeing. So yeah, I think there's a lot about the creative process that Lightroom can facilitate.
Yeah, and it's interesting that when we're dealing with people and subjects like that, you know, the edit is maybe their character and they're where they are. You know, so his clothing, the wooden slats behind him, the chair, his hat, his mustache, everything informs our decisions with regards to the look, isn't it? The feel, and like you said, that filmic feel. It's got that kind of old American feel to me. It might not be there, but you know what I'm saying. And so that's definitely a cool vibe to sort of take it down that street. All right, how are we doing? I reckon, Adrian, you got a quick one in you, and I've got a quick one, and then we'll wrap her up.
Yep, I think so. So just a very quickie, really. So let me just share my screen. Apologies. This one annoyed me. I thought it's got great potential, but I think, we were talking about cropping in camera before, and I think in this case, this particular image probably would have been better with a bit more around it. I think it needs something on the right hand end here. It's right on the edge of the frame, and it's just, for me, it just needs way more that side. So literally whilst you were just talking, apologies, I nipped into Photoshop and quickly stretched it. So I ended up with this, which the right hand side here was just using content aware fill crop extension. So just adding that extra. It didn't work perfectly, so you might have seen me slightly distracted. So I needed to fix it. But really was more making the point about the composition. So in this case, the composition between, the difference between that one and this one, it's just, for me, this is working better. If anything, I would probably be more biased towards having even more space on the right hand side, and just having that flowing into the image that way. There's also some mist in the valley here, so with a little bit more work, I might have looked to see how that feeds in with it as well. But yeah, at the moment, it also in here it's really dark in the trunk and in the main branches here. I don't quite know. Oh, of course, it's put a grad on, right? So got a grad on there, and it's just killed all the detail. So I had to come and lift that up, bring back the detail in there as well. So there's something. Oh, it could even be a tripod there. Look. Oh yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it is. Somebody's elbow in a tripod. Never mind. But yeah, I think the idea is nice enough, and I think the shape of the tree is lovely. There are a few windswept trees around in isolation. They are really beautiful items, and it's nice to have a chance of doing it. So sometimes, in camera, I would have wanted to have more space there and not have to fix it afterwards. But it is possible to fix it afterwards.
Yeah. Nice. Actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to save the one I was going to do for next time, because not that it was going to take long, but it's a really great shot, and I just want to give it a little bit of love there. So what I will do is I'm just going to share this.
Lovely.
And as we wrap up, sorry, Matt's asked, I think he means Adrian, not me, about how you stretch the image there, Adrian. That was just in Photoshop, wasn't it?
You kind of just pull the edges out. Yeah, there's the crop tool in Photoshop has a content aware mode, and if you tick that, you can go beyond the edge of the image and take it further, and it then works out what's missing. Yeah. And it's really clever. It's got a database of all the places in the world, and it just puts that extra bit in.
Yeah, it could even put the rest of the tripod in on the other side.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So just as I wrap it up, I'm going to say thank you all. It was really cool. Great audience tonight. Great questions. Great comments.
Can I just make a quick advert?
Yes, I was about go for it.
Oh, you're going to do that, okay? Yeah, just to say that we've been able to put a lot of the workshops that I've been doing in the classroom online now. So if you're interested in Lightroom, Photoshop, Wix, all sorts of other possibilities, black and white, Nick, all of that, you can now do that through Light and Land.
Yes, absolutely. No, absolutely. Head to the Light and Land website, and you can look via tutors. You can look at Adrian's listings, and you can look at the online courses they're doing. So Light and Land, we have put a load more online things together, including all the stuff Adrian's doing, a couple of other bits, Paul doing mobile phone. I know there's some more stuff that we haven't announced yet. So we know we want to do some bits for you. Verity, I'm going to throw to you just for a quick sign off.
Oh, yeah. I just want to say quickly that I'm doing an online workshop for Landscape Photographer of the Year, and the deets are on their Facebook page. So that's gone up today, if that's all right to plug. It's online. obviously, COVID times. But yeah, if you head on to the Landscape Photography of the Year page, you'll be able to see stuff there. Sign off. This was fun. Also terrifying. Not gonna lie. I feel like I was looking at Lightroom like I'd seen it for the first time. Like, but yeah, I think the caliber of the images that we got sent in were really great. Like, there's loads of them that I'd be super happy to have in my Lightroom, and now I do, which means I technically. But yeah.
Don't worry, we've got a self-destruct button on all your images, everyone. You won't see them on Verity's Instagram feed tomorrow. A quick one just before we go. Simeon has asked, he missed the first 20 minutes. Is this available somewhere to watch later? Yes. If you go to YouTube, go to Light and Land, and you just click on the playlists, there's a live stream playlist, so you can rewatch it there. And or if you're on Facebook, you can just simply reopen the post and drag the thing back to the beginning and watch it from the beginning. But they're all available through YouTube as well. Lots of nice comments coming in from everybody, including people who we murdered on their images. So that's great. We really do appreciate this. Look, we're all stuck in this, aren't we, for the next few months, it seems. We want to keep coming with different things. We've got a good amount of images now. I will put a shout out for more images in the coming weeks. And so how you can find out about that is to subscribe to the Light and Land newsletter through their website, or follow Light and Land on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. And the terrible trio will be back to talk photo editing in due course. But I'm going to wrap us all up. Adrian, big thanks, and Verity, great to work with you again as ever. And stay safe out there, everyone. Stick to the rules. Do what you can do, and we'll see you all on here very soon. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.